Hey students, today we're going to be talking about transitions and how transitions can make your writing so much better and more sophisticated with a minimum amount of effort, and that's really what we're all about, right? So the best way to learn how to do transitions is to apply them to your own writing. So we're not going to spend a ton of time. I'm going to give a couple examples, and then it's up to you to practice because that's the best way to do this. My students do say, down the line, years later, that the paramedic method and transitions have made the biggest differences to their writing, and they're really glad that they learned how to do them. So I hope that you will apply this to your writing and see the benefits as well. So these are not your mama's transitions. If you're thinking about a list of transitional phrases and transitional devices, those are not the same thing. So I'm going to go to my Purdue Online Writing Lab and I'll show you really quick these transitional devices. This is the list. This is the first, second, third, in conclusion, to sum up, for example, all those things. That's not what I mean when I talk about transitions. That's not what I'm referring to. These are third grade transitions. These are not going to cut it as you try to have more professional and more sophisticated writing. So we're going to go to the How to Write Transitions in the Purdue Online Writing Lab. I'm a big fan of the Purdue Online Writing Lab for almost everything. And I think they do a really good job of explaining what they are. So the point of a transition is to unify your writing, to give your reader an understanding of how your ideas are building on one another. So if you're just having paragraphs where you throw ideas in and they don't have any connection to each other, it's confusing, your point isn't building, and your audience doesn't know what the heck you're talking about. So when you're using transitions, you're creating bridges and creating connections between your ideas so that the reader sees how the ideas build to your conclusion. And that's what we want. We want that momentum. We want each idea to build on it, the previous idea, so that we're working towards the end goal, okay? So basically, it says by referencing in one paragraph the material from previous paragraphs, the writer can develop those important points for the reader, okay? So we're working together, our ideas are building. It's a good idea to continue one paragraph where another leaves off. Okay, and we're going to talk about when that might be hard and what that means. But first, we're going to look at some examples of some good transitions from a piece of business writing, and this is a cover letter from a student. Okay, so they're applying for a job, and they're talking about in their first paragraph the skills that they have. Okay, I feel like my ability to analyze numerical data and work in a team makes me the best qualified candidate for this position. So there's the ending idea is I've got these two really great skills. So it makes sense to the audience that they're going to start off by talking about one of those skills. And instead of just jumping in, they have a nice little transitional phrase here. The ability to analyze data and understand principles is crucial to being successful. The accounting courses I have completed have sharpened these skills. So we've got the transition from the ideas that I mentioned in the previous paragraph. I pull those down and start that in my topic sentence. And then I talk about what I now am going to write about in this next paragraph. And then we give examples. So they give examples of that skill in action. And you see they do it again. So we talked about these accounting principles. In addition to understanding accounting principles, it's also essential to have effective communication skills and work in a team environment. So as a reader, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is what they mentioned in the previous paragraph. All right. And this is what they're going to talk about in this paragraph. And it's just a signpost to me about what they're going to talk about. And then they give examples. It's beautiful. Okay. So you can see that transitions in business writing are pretty brief. They're not super fancy. We keep it concise. We keep things moving, but we are making those connections between paragraphs, and it just flows. It just flows nicely. We love it. We like it. You want to do it. All right. The next example I've got is from a student's local issues paper. The topic was about confession websites. I don't really think they're a thing anymore, but it was pretty hot a couple years ago. And so they start off by talking about what these confession websites are, and then why they have perhaps a negative impact on a school's image, okay? So this is what they're talking about, what they are, and they're talking about how these pictures and, there's no repercussions. Then they kind of tie those ideas together of what this does. It creates, so talking about pictures and posting and partying, and then it says what these do. This trend is out of control because it creates a bad reputation for a school. They took the previous information in the previous paragraph and matched it with what they're going to talk about in this paragraph. Okay? They talk about why it could be bad, right? So for our image to turn around at ASU, we need to get rid of these pages and focus on the good things. So you can see they're already signposting what's going to come. So what do you think the next paragraph is going to be about? The good things about some of these clubs and sororities on campus. Okay? And that's what they do. They have a good reputation, and we can do more than just be a party school. So you can see that they actually kind of start to set up the transition at the end there, which you can absolutely do. The goal is just to create connections and a smooth transition from one idea to the next and show how the ideas build. That's what we're trying to do here. All right, now let's come down here. As a young adult, it's important to keep in mind how you represent yourself and how being on these confession pages can cause a negative view about yourself. So basically, not only do these websites create a bad reputation for the school, but it can create a bad image for yourself, a bad reputation for yourself. But then they just sum up the argument and they're done with their paper. And it's a little abrupt. So then they're like, okay, let's stop doing that. The reason this doesn't flow, and so I wanted to show you an example of when you don't have a transition, and probably the reason they don't have a very strong transition from this paragraph to their conclusion is because they didn't know how. They didn't know how to connect those ideas because those ideas don't go together. And I'll tell you why. They didn't finish that idea. They dropped in an idea at the end of that paragraph and didn't even address it. They didn't talk about how these websites can be a bad idea and, damage your own reputation. Maybe they have a paragraph in there about how even though these pictures are posted anonymously, if there's a picture of you out there passed out at a party and maybe you're trying to go for an internship and that photo pops up on the internet somehow, or someone sees that photo, you may not be getting that job or that internship. So that's a whole nother piece that they could have added into their paper, but they just drop in this idea, don't develop it, and then move on. And that's why it's hard to create a transition, because those ideas don't go together because they didn't develop it. So you'll see what Purdue says. Where this is challenging may suggest that the paragraphs don't belong together at all. So if you're having trouble writing a transition, ask yourself, do these ideas go together? If I can't find the connection, trust me. If you're the author and you can't find the connection, the audience isn't going to make the connection on their own. Okay. So what you want to do is maybe change the order of your paragraphs, change up the organization. Maybe it goes together a little bit better if you develop an idea before you discuss something. So in this case, they're missing a whole paragraph and they need to go in and they need to develop this idea, and then it will transition better into their conclusion. Does that make sense? So if you're having trouble making a transition, it might indicate that your organization is off or you haven't completely developed your ideas. I hope that helps. I want to show you kind of the, the equation, the transition equation one more time here. So the key to producing good transitions is highlighting connections between paragraphs. You want to reference the previous idea in your topic sentence of your new paragraph, say what this new paragraph is going to be about, and then explain how the ideas go together. So the formula looks like this. Previous idea in the paragraph before, the new idea of what this paragraph is going to be about, explain how these ideas go together, and that's your grown-up transition. It might feel a little rough at first. What I would recommend doing is writing your entire paper, that rough draft, and then go in and make your transitions after, once you see how your entire paper goes together and how it flows. If you're having trouble creating transitions, you can reach out and ask me, or you may want to switch up the order of your paragraphs. Maybe it doesn't build and it doesn't connect because it doesn't really make sense going there. So you need to kind of switch up how you're doing it. I hope that was very helpful to you and that you are able to practice these transitions on your own and that they help your writing for the future.